Michigan football is still alive and well via spring practice and recruiting. College football is a year-round thing. There's the regular season with the games, the very short postseason of celebration and plain winter workouts and recruiting, but not much practicing. Kind of the closest thing to an off-season would be the brief postseason. And then there's the preseason, which is the largest part of the season. It's where Michigan football and every other football program are right now, working out what things are going to look like in the fall, practicing a ton, bringing in new transfers, getting new coaches settled, etc. And we're going to talk about recruiting, the Big House's new scoreboards, and just how things are going at spring practice today. It's probably going to be around a 15 to 20 minute video. And first and foremost, I want to talk about the direction that this program is heading. And I think it's a positive one. And that's not to say that the road is getting easier. The Big Ten, I'd say, is getting tougher. James Franklin, I think, is incompetent, but Penn State is still, they're still there. And with the recruiting class they brought in, I think in a year they will be once again a legitimate threat. Maybe they'll even be a legitimate threat this year. Michigan State is kind of in the same situation, but they did really well last year. They have a lot of players returning. They made upgrades at certain positions on their staff. There's no doubt about it. I would say their pass rush coaching hires are an upgrade. We'll see how the new running backs coach does. But again, they're bringing in a lot of transfers. In Ohio State, they return a lot of guys, defense and offense. The guys they lose are just going to be replaced by guys that are of similar skill level. And they return their arguably three best offensive players who should make the number one offense in the nation next year. So the Big Ten, specifically the East, is getting tougher by the minute. But I don't think Michigan is here to just fade into the background. I think Michigan is trending toward being more legitimate contenders than the frauds they were the previous 6 years before Harbaugh's amazing 2021 season. That's not to say I think Harbaugh is all of a sudden some elite coach, but he's trying to maintain that same staff that he had last year. It seems like he's trying to maintain the same culture. There are plenty of leaders like Cade McNamara and Ronnie Bell returning from last year. J.J. McCarthy is stepping into kind of a leadership role. Same with probably guys like, Blake Corum, Andrell Anthony, and a lot of the freshmen too. They're trying to maintain that same culture, which I think is very important. Michigan has recruiting momentum, and we'll get into some of that a little later. But the overall direction is something that Michigan fans should feel positive about. And same thing with just college football fans in general who are paying attention to Michigan. Yes, Michigan had that whole debacle about, whether Harbaugh's going to move on to the NFL or not. But at the end of the day, he returned. I don't think he's going to be like Dan Mullen, a reference that Josh Pate always uses, where he'll shy into the background and kind of forget how to coach in college. The only one thing that I'm concerned about, and after this we're going to move on to talking about spring football, is the new contract Harbaugh was given. Looking into it, I know it was a good raise, gave his staff a little more. It gave Harbaugh much more. It helped, but I don't know if it's big enough guns to rise to the level that I think we can rise to if we go all in. But then again, maybe if Harbaugh has another fantastic year and gets 11 or 12 wins, maybe that'll sort it out itself. But now we're going to move on to the spring ball discussion and talk about replacing the pass rush, which I think is the most important thing this offseason. You have most of your offense returning. You have a great running back room. You have a great O-line room. You could argue that those rooms are the deepest in the Big Ten, and they could contend for the deepest in the nation. Similar with tight end, wide receiver and quarterback would be the most important areas, but those areas are above average at minimum to good, maybe great. Well, I'd like to see more out of those units, but the defense is definitely the most important topic because of how much has departed. You have a new DC. The defensive staff is more it has newer guys, a greater amount of newer guys than last year. You have Mike Elston, you have Jesse Minter, and those are just a new D-line coach and new defensive coordinator they're huge, even though you still have Steve Clinkscale and George Hilo coaching the secondary and running backs specifically. So let's first talk about the pass rush, specifically finding, edge rushers, two guys who are like Hutchinson and Ojabo. You got Taylor Upshaw, you have Mike Morris. Those are the two defensive ends that come to mind for me. You also have Junior Colson, who could step up and be a better linebacker and, grow into a better position as a linebacker. But first, let's talk about what Jesse Minter had to say about it. And what he basically said, and I'm going to be paraphrasing a lot, but that only time will tell if there's a player in the locker room who is like Hutchinson or Ojabo. It's too early to tell. There's schematically some things that Minter thinks will have to be changed to more fit this defense. And I think that's an indication that they don't think they have the generational pass rush duo, which is obviously the most intelligent thing to think. It's going to be hard to have that 2 years in a row. It's like having a running back like Kenneth Walker 2 years in a row, or having a running back like Mark Ingram, two running backs in a row that are that great. Same thing with this pass rush. It's likely not going to happen. His track record of having, a large amount of sacks on his D-line, this is referencing Mike Elston. He's never had a true generational talent, if we're being honest, and Minter agrees. Yet Elston does a really good job of mixing in stunts and games, and he likes to create different kinds of rushes, and that's something that Minter thinks Michigan is going to have to be good at. And I do think that Mike Elston is an upgrade over Sean Nua on the defensive staff. I'm a huge fan of it. He's also a great recruiter, and I can't wait to see where the D-line is. I'm expecting defensive tackle play will be better, mainly because, you got Mozzie Smith in there. Michigan, I guarantee, is probably going to get a defensive tackle from the portal if they really want one. And it's mainly the Mike Elston effect. Defensive end, though, and pass rush overall, I think will take a slight step back. Now let's talk about what Steve Clinkscale has to say. There are two articles discussing what Minter and Clinkscale had to say. I'm referencing these two for the video, along with two other articles that we're going to get to later in our second discussion about recruiting and Michigan's stadium upgrade. So Clinkscale says that there's an urgency when it comes to the pass rush, and that the deal is that you've had great pass rushers, and even if you don't have great pass rushers, if you can't cover for a certain amount of time, it doesn't matter. And he told his guys, Clinkscale did, to just, give the pass rush one more second because they're so quick, they're so efficient, and it really helped the secondary do their jobs. But Clinkscale also says we've got to do a better job in coverage, and that he's always going to be critical at it. He says he knows that many think that Michigan did a great job, but he feels like we can do better, we as in Michigan. And I really like that mindset. And that's a mindset of a winner. That's a total, he's not being a jerk about it, but he's being a Nick Saban about the secondary. Always improvement, near perfectionist, if not a perfectionist. He was great at Kentucky. The secondary last year made a massive jump. It's a jump that you don't see often. I mean, the pass rush, of course, was amazing, but you knew you had talent up at the front seven. The secondary, you looked back there. Where was the talent? There was nothing. Quite frankly, it was probably one of the most, underdeveloped areas, given the talent that it had by star ratings from high school. It was so underdeveloped by Don Brown, and Clinkscale came in, and this pass defense was phenomenal. Even in coverage, there were moments where it got blown up in the Georgia game. Ohio State, what do you expect? Who can cover Ohio State's wide receivers and QB? None. You have to rush them and sack them, and that's what we did against Ohio State. So obviously there's urgency when it comes to replacing the pass rush, But Michigan's front seven does have emerging playmakers. I mean, again, you have Taylor Upshaw, Mike Morris. Taylor Upshaw specifically looked good in his playing time last year, but was overshadowed by Hutchinson and Ojabo. And now we're going to talk about the secondary and how it's growing, and it's full of versatile players. I mean, you have Jamon Green, who stepped up according to Steve Clinkscale. Makari Page, RJ Moten, they've stepped up as well. And Mike Sanistril, who Steve Clinkscale, funny enough, calls him Mikey. He thinks he's doing a great job, and he is switching over from wide receiver to secondary. And I think I'm thinking from what I've seen, though that might be Cornelius Johnson, I forget. But Michigan is trying to have versatile players who can play on the offense and defense, specifically receiver and secondary. And I know that Sanistril is the main one. So, I mean, I look at this, and Clinkscale says that Sanistril, DJ Turner can play corner and nickel in the secondary, and he thinks that Sanistril is going to specifically move to nickel, and he gives credit to Harbaugh for trying that out and wanting that. And I just look at the secondary, and I think that the secondary will probably be one of the stronger parts of the defense, if I'm being honest, because you got RJ Moten, you have DJ Turner, you have guys that have played. Again, Michigan returns so much 2D production. You have guys that got a lot of playing time, and Michigan had some injuries, O-line last year, along with some secondary injuries, so that gave some other players playing time, and it actually worked out in Michigan's favor. The secondary is growing mentally, physically. It's full of so many different playmakers. And Steve Clinkscale, I'm going to read this whole part, and it's about Mike Sanistril for the most part. And Clinkscale says that he's physical, he'll block you at receiver, he'll tackle you. I'm working on him keeping his eyes up. The biggest thing coming over from offense, if you're not used to tackling all the time, keeping your eyes up. But he was a great special teams player for us too. So we do a lot. We carry over the same drills. It sounds like obviously he's going to be a dual threat's obviously a quarterback term, but that's kind of the best way I can put it. He's going to be playing defense and offense. Dual positions, probably the better term to use. Again, he gives credit to Jay Harbaugh. He's doing a great job back there with me and the safeties and all the guys back there. And so Jay has already taught that special teams, how to tackle. That's been a carryover. And everyone has done a great job. And he also mentions how Jesse Minter is a defensive back and secondary guy himself. And I think that will help even more with the secondary and such. So I think that's enough just talking about spring football and mainly focusing on the defense. The defense is going to be the area with the most eyes. But to go off topic of what I've listed here, just for a few, probably 1 or 2 minutes, I want to stress the importance of the offense. Do not assume the offense is going to be elite. And honestly, I look at the offense, give it some benefit of the doubt due to last year, having Sharon Moore and Matt Weiss as co-offensive coordinators and co-play callers, along with probably Harbaugh at least approving the play calls. I look at the offense and I do give it some benefit of the doubt. And I do think it will be a great offense. I think it's going to be the second best in the Big Ten behind Ohio State. It might even be the best rushing offense. But past Harbaugh teams, they have returned a lot of starters. They've had promise. Remember 2018 to 2019? Complete failure. 2016 to 17, the offense falls flat on its face. So Harbaugh, you cannot give him the same benefit of the doubt with offense that you can with defense, but which is, ironic in some way because Harbaugh coming at Michigan was, known as this offensive guy. The offense I think will be great, but we cannot assume that the offense is going to be elite. You have to give it, like the defense, some interest, some skepticism. You have to study it, and I'm the coaching staff will obviously do that and try to improve it to the best of their abilities. But there are certainly things to be talked about offense. I just didn't mention them in this video because I've stressed them previously in other videos, and they're not as important as the defense is, at least from what we know. So that's spring football, just talking about, again, pass rush, secondary, the players who are stepping up, what Steve Clinkscale and Jesse Minter think specifically about the pass rush and the secondary. Now we'll move on to some recruiting news and some other news. The first news is the Big House will be receiving a $41 million scoreboard. Whoa. I'm hoping it wraps around the entire stadium to close everything off, which will trap in more noise to add to the home field advantage effect. It'll keep out some wind to keep everyone a little more comfortable, and it will just look cool. But I kind of doubt that. The article by WolverinesWire.usatoday.com reads, "The current Michigan Stadium scoreboards are so 2011. Just over 10 years ago, the Big House got with the times with new, bigger scoreboards adorning each end zone. Well, now it's time for an update. According to reports, the new scoreboards will cost $41 million and will be completed in 2023. If the proposal by the athletic department is approved by the U of M Board of Regents. They'll maintain the same height, but will have wider screens. And according to the letter, the new scoreboards will be the same height, 62 feet, but wider than the 108 feet they currently take up." And I think this is from a tweet. Michigan's athletic department says the cost will be paid for, quote, "from athletic department resources," but it's asking for university assistance through bond proceeds and money from the general fund to help with construction cash flow. While the current ones hardly seem outdated, still, it's good to see the athletic department working to keep the biggest football stadium aligned with the times, especially with more and more people staying home nationally. And you know what? This sounds like a stupid idea to a certain degree, but I love the concept of, you know what? Make it 125,000 or 150,000 capacity, like in the near future. Make it even bigger and possibly redesign the whole stadium. It's just a personal idea of mine. But new scoreboards, hopefully they're the ones, that there's a concept going around that the scoreboards connect the two sides, and I think block off the two sides. I forget what sides they're called, but they connect the booths and stuff, and I think that would be an awesome job if that happened. Transfer portal defensive tackle Cam Good is set to visit in the future. He had a few forced fumbles, a few sacks. He's from Central Florida, and Blake Corum said on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, which, yes, I watched that episode, that he is, helping in recruiting of Cam Good, and he thinks that there needs to be more explosiveness and speed at defensive tackle. The staff thinks so. Defensive tackle, when Christopher Hinton declared, that was whoa. It was unexpected. It's not to say that Michigan doesn't have depth there, or that they couldn't be successful without a transfer portal defensive tackle, but it would certainly help to fill a defensive line that is certainly losing a lot of starters, a lot of experience and talent, explosiveness, you name it. The defensive line is practically losing a large chunk of everything. And finally, Michigan's final 2022 target will commit April 8th, and I will tie this point in with recruiting. That's Josh Conerly Jr., and it looks right now that he's trending toward USC. When Courtney Morgan went to Washington to take a new position there, our recruitment with Conerly took a big hit. And it's no surprise, kids from Washington on the West Coast, USC is obviously one of the hottest names in college football now. They have, by total average player talent rating, the best recruiting class by a mile in this current 2023 cycle. The 2022 cycle outside of Conerly is basically completed, so 2023 is now your current recruiting class to keep up with and watch, So I wouldn't be shocked if he went to USC. I'd say Michigan's probably in second place just because of how heavily we've recruited him. It looks to be Michigan, Oregon, and USC, but if I was to put in a prediction, I'm a pessimist myself. And plus what I've read, I'd say corner leap to USC. If he commits to Michigan, it would be an epic surprise, but don't get your hopes up. And then finally, we're going to read an article by themaizenbrew.com. It was an article posted 2 or 3 days ago. It's a recruiting roundup. Michigan makes top 5 list for 2023 top 100 prospect and others as well. They made the list for Caden Green, who's a 2023 4-star offensive lineman. Will take an official visit to Ann Arbor on June 17th through 19th. And you also have 2023 running back Benjamin Hall, who's also visiting Ann Arbor this summer on the same weekend, June 17th to 19th, as Green. You know, Michigan, you saw how good their running back room was this past season. Getting in, you already have, I think, Cole Cabana, who's committed to Michigan, but getting another one would be really neat. And it would just help. You know, Michigan would actually run, I think, occasionally two running backs on the field. And Michigan and Mike Hart love a running back rotation, sometimes a 3-man rotation, as you saw with Donovan Edwards. But with Blake Corum, Hassan Haskins, you saw how explosive yet powerful that group could be. That in itself is a big recruiting pitch. And this article also talks about Cam Goode and the defensive tackle transfer set to visit soon. This is according to a report from On3's Chris Ballas. Goode, unlike Green or Hall, again, is not a high school prospect. He's a transfer. He started his career at Virginia Tech before redshirting in 2018. Then he went to play at UCF. This past season, Goode recorded 23 tackles, 3 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles and intercepted a pass in 13 games with the Knights. If Michigan is able to land Goode, it would give the Wolverines a veteran, solidly built player at a position of need. And another part is, according to E.J. Holland, there's growing optimism on the Penn State side that it will be able to flip Rapelje and make him a Nittany Lion. This is a 3-star tight end commit, Andrew Rapelje, who visited Penn State over this past weekend. And finally, Michigan is a top school for 4-star class of 23 running back Jaden Lamar. 5'11", 190-pound back, has visited Ann Arbor twice, the first time being for Michigan's home game against Washington in September, then again in December. It will be interesting to see if Mike Hart and the Wolverines can make an impression on him. And that's all for this article and really all for this video. Michigan targeting several different running back recruits, also targeting an offensive lineman, which is good. Michigan, a lot of these guys, like Trevor Keegan, Andrew Vistardis, etc., just more guys. A lot of them were 3-star, 4-star guys. A lot of them were just well coached, well developed. Getting in some extra talent never hurts. Same thing with getting a transfer from defensive tackle and getting highly recruited running backs. I think that Michigan has a lot of momentum with recruiting. Some of it was obviously taken away by Jim Harbaugh and the NFL rumors. But if Michigan can keep this momentum going with recruiting and with spring ball, I think it could make, and I think it will, make to be a very good 2021 season. And if you haven't seen 2022 season, pardon me, and if you haven't seen my prediction video already, go check it out. It should be the first video when you visit the page, but I'll link it down below anyway. And that's all I have to say for this video. If you liked it, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell so you can get notified when I post new content. I have an inconsistent schedule, so if you want to see uploads or watch the newest video, it's best to click that notification bell so you can get notified. And also comment your thoughts down below on Michigan spring ball and recruiting, and tell me what you think. I love to reply to comments and have discussion. It's one of the best things that college football provides us. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.